Today we are going to talk about two readings that have had a huge impact on me and my writing. And these readings are so important because they cover some foundational concepts I think you'll find really helpful. So these readings we are talking about today can be found for free through Colorado State's Writing Across the Curriculum Open Access Library. So if you just Google 10 ways to think about writing, it is actually the very first reading that will come up in Google. So these readings are from Shelley Reed's 10 Ways to Think About Writing, and today we are focusing on sections 5 and 7. So let's get started. In Reed's section called Pink Houses and Choruses, she describes a scenario that serves as an important metaphor we can all learn from. She begins with a description of a scenario many of us can probably relate to. In high school writing classes, you probably heard your teachers repeatedly emphasizing the importance of thesis statements and topic sentences. In the words of my toddler, I might ask, but why? This question is totally understandable. I get it. But let's take a look at this metaphor for better understanding. Say you're driving down the interstate at 65 miles an hour with 3 friends from out of town, and you suddenly say to them, "Hey, there's that amazing pink house." What happens? Probably there's a lot of whiplash-inducing head swiveling, and someone's elbow ends up in someone else's ribs, and maybe one of your friends gets a glimpse, but probably nobody really gets a chance to see it. And somebody might not believe you if she didn't see it for herself. What if you had instead said, "Hey, coming up on the right here, in about 2 miles, there's this amazing, huge, neon pink house. Watch for it." They'd be ready. They'd know where to look and what to look for. And they'd see what you wanted them to see. Writers need to advise their readers in a similar way. That advice doesn't always need to be in a thesis statement or a topic sentence, but it does need to happen regularly so that readers don't miss something crucial. Sure, we aren't supposed to needlessly repeat ourselves when we are writing, but there comes a point when we are simply avoiding repetition because we've been taught to believe it's dangerous. The thing is, our audience needs us to repeat our main ideas. Our audience needs us to continually point back to our thesis statements. If we don't explain how our examples relate to our main ideas, our audience is going to be wondering, so what? In the next section, Wash and Wear Paragraphs, Reed addresses an issue I encounter every single semester. When my students arrive in my classroom as college freshmen, many of them carry with them the preconceived notion that each paragraph must follow very specific rules. Particularly, students expect that they must always have 5 to 7 sentences in each paragraph. One time, I even had a student who in high school was required to write 9 sentences per paragraph his freshman year, 10 his sophomore year, 11 his junior year, and 12 his senior year. Can you imagine how this turned out? What the student ended up with was some paragraphs that droned on and on well after he was done making his point. He also had some paragraphs that left me still curious to learn more. Side note, the student was an excellent writer and had some really awesome messages to share. He just needed some practice with paragraph organization. And by the end of the semester, he'd nailed it. So, before we can decide on paragraph lengths, we need to understand one thing. Paragraph lengths should not be determined by arbitrary rules. They should be determined by the content of the paragraph and the moment you switch from one main point to the next. Let's look at some quotes from wash and wear paragraphs for a metaphor that will help you remember this concept. So now let's look here at these two quotes I have selected from 10 Ways to Think About Writing, starting with the metaphor itself about laundry. Reed asks, is there ever reason to do one tiny laundry load, even if it might waste money or energy? Sure. Maybe you've got an important event to attend Friday night and you just need to wash your best black shirt quickly, or maybe you have a small washing machine. Is there ever reason to do one slightly oversized load? Absolutely. Perhaps you're low on quarters, or there's only one machine open in the dormitory laundry room, and you need to get all those t-shirts clean. We could also think about this metaphor with laundry in terms of this idea that we should not combine our bright colors with our whites, right? So when my daughter was little, she wore school uniforms to school. And I was a single mom, so I was always in a rush to get everything done. And I just threw all of her clothes into the washing machine. I didn't bother separating her brand new red shirt with or from her school uniforms. And what I ended up with was a load of school uniforms where all of her perfectly white shirts were pink and I couldn't get the stains out. And so I had to go buy an entire new batch of white shirts for her school uniforms. So we can relate that to paragraphs, believe it or not. So let's look at what Reed says about paragraphs. The same thing is true for paragraphs. Sometimes you have just one important thing to say, or your readers have a short attention span, so you want a short paragraph, even a one-sentence paragraph. On the other hand, sometimes you have a complex explanation that you want your reader to work through all at once. So you stretch your paragraph a little longer than usual and hope your reader stays with you. You want to write paragraphs that your target audience can handle without straining their brains or leaving suds all over the floor. So, to kind of summarize what Reed is talking about here, she is telling you that you should vary your paragraph lengths based on the purpose of the paragraph rather than on the rule that your paragraphs have to be a certain length every single time. Before we begin our practice activity, I do want to emphasize that the tools and ideas presented in this video can be used for all different genres of academic writing, many types of essays, from narrative essays to arguments to analysis. But in this practice activity, we are going to be practicing analysis specifically. So, before completing this activity, you do need to know what you are going to write about. But if this example is helpful for coming up with your topic, then that's great. So if you don't know what you're going to write about yet, watch this example before you complete this activity for yourself. So if you are completing an analysis, you are going to need to know two specific things. First, you need to know what the overall message or goal is for whatever it is you are analyzing. If you are analyzing a song, then you need to know what the message of the song is and what the artist wants the audience to get from the song. You might be trying to figure out what the artist wants the audience to feel after listening to the song, and what the audience wants, or what the audience should be thinking after they have listened to the song. In this case, I am going to be determining what the goal or the purpose is of this specific piece of art. The second thing you need to know is what details you plan to analyze. So let's take a closer look at this piece of art and the sign that is placed in front of it so that we can determine what the message and the goal of this artwork is, and also what details of the art we can use to create a thorough analysis. Now, before I can decide what content is going to go into each of my individual paragraphs, I need to look closely at whatever it is I am analyzing and decide which details I think are the most important and the ones that deserve the most attention. So, a couple of things I see from the very beginning are the size of the sculpture. This looks like a very large sculpture of a whale. So I might have a paragraph that describes how big the sculpture is and how the size of the sculpture can get the attention of the audience and maybe even spark their curiosity. I can also look at the sign that is in front of the artwork and look at the words and the images that are incorporated into this sign. So for maybe one paragraph of my essay, I am going to analyze a single sentence in this sign. Let's take a closer look. When we look closely at this sign, we can see that there are a lot of words on the sign. So, do we want to describe and analyze each of the sentences in this sign in one single paragraph? Of course not. We want to get as detailed as we can about each item we are analyzing in a single paragraph so that our audience doesn't get confused about our main point. So I'm going to start with the sentence over here in purple. It's a bigger font than the others, and it says, every 9 minutes, 300,000 pounds of plastic, the weight of a blue whale, makes its way into the ocean. Now, we will talk more about the different things that we can use to analyze in a different video. But I just want to point out that I can write an entire paragraph about this single sentence. I can write about the size of the words and how they are larger than most of the other words on the sign. I can also talk about how the color of the words is different from most of the words on the sign. The font is different because this specific statistic needs to stand out. These are some mind-blowing numbers that the Monterey Bay Aquarium is incorporating into this sign. And it's definitely going to influence the audience because it's a huge, important fact that we all need to be paying attention to. So, I want you to think about what it is that you are going to be writing about. Can you choose one specific detail that you are going to write about? We'll talk in another video about how we can really dig into that detail and how we can structure our paragraph about that single detail to really dig in to what that detail is all about and why it is placed where the creator has placed it. Okay, I can't wait to do more analysis with you. So be sure to look out for the next video, which is going to be all about organizing that single paragraph. I'll see you soon.